warning. This show features dark subjects which may be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Chaos Jar. I'm the loud and obnoxious one, J Wes Secord. Hey. Over here is our host and big bag of facts, Bad Ben.
Hey.
And as always, we are joined with our good friend, AT Token.
I'm eating chocolate. I gotta maintain my brownness.
He's brown.
Nutty, too.
And, as another special little visit from our fan, Ashley.
Hey!
Executive producer.
Executive. Sorry. From our executive. I'm sorry. Oh shit! We should clean up.
Don't worry, it'll come out of your paycheck.
She'll stop funding us. As always, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at BA Chaos Jar. You can follow us on Facebook at Chaos Jar Podcast, which is also the name of our YouTube channel. Have any friends who aren't actually, good at keeping up with the whole podcasty thing? Send them to YouTube. Way easier. You can also be a patron at patreon.com/chaosjar. And, send us a little dough, get early access to the overflow. Hey, that rhymed.
We need a camera just for your hands.
And you can watch whatever overflow episodes are already there. I forgot to mention it earlier, but you can also follow me on Twitter and ask me random questions at I'm glad you asked _ Ask me questions, and I'll give you answers. It's my slogan. God, what a terrible slogan.
That, and I'm glad you asked.
Yeah. All right. All this will be in the show notes. And now that that's all taken care of, let's throw it on and find out what's going into the jar today.
So we're talking about the Sodder kids.
All right. That was a good episode.
All right. So.
It better not be farmers.
Oh, God.
Please don't be creepy children.
No, we have an episode for that.
No, they like to melt metal to metal.
Sodder.
Which is a team of kids that melted metal to metal, and they just kept going. They figured out how electricals worked, and then all of a sudden...
And then the Eiffel Tower was made.
All right. So before we talk about them, we should talk about Fayetteville, West Virginia.
Wow.
That's where all the greatest stories start.
I made a French reference, and then we get a French name.
Yeah.
Fayetteville.
I thought you said Fayetteville at first.
Fayetteville. Just a bunch of Fiats driving around. It was founded by Abraham Vandal, who was a Revolutionary War veteran and a local farmer. Which is funny because you mentioned farmer. And then the town was originally named Vandalia. Weird.
I had nothing to comment on that. Vandalia, areonomics words.
So the Fayette County Courthouse is actually located where Vandal's farm originally stood. So they bulldozed his farm and put a courthouse there.
Oh.
Did they arrest him to do it? Because that would be amazing.
That would have been amazing. That would be such a good thing.
Was it all legal?
I don't know, but it would be a real precedent.
Eminent domain?
I'll be the judge of that.
I object.
Lawyer.
So, the town's name was later, prior to 1837, changed to Fayetteville after the Revolutionary War hero Marquis de Lafayette, who actually will have an episode on his own because he's a huge story. He played part in the Revolutionary War for America and for the French Revolution, and then for the Second French Revolution.
Don't worry. I know quite a bit. I watched Hamilton.
I did too.
So he had toured the U.S. in 1824 to 1825. So During the Civil War, the majority of the people here had sympathy for the Confederacy, so it's kind of leaning that way. The neighboring counties were really unionist, so there was a lot of like infighting happening, and the town actually changed hands between the North and the South a lot.
Can you imagine getting stuck between that?
Yeah.
Just like, you're part of the South now. You're part of the North now. You're part of the South now.
Skirmish town.
Yeah, like, jeez, that just sucks.
All I can think, okay, are we for slavery or against it this week? Like,
yeah. they check the daily newspapers. Take the radio, listen to the local sports team. Is it racist?
So, only if you're allowed an opinion.
I'm glad you said that. So, Fayetteville was actually, because of this back and forth between the two armies, was actually partially destroyed due to all the fighting. In 1897, the courthouse was completed, and it's a huge, remarkable example of Romanesque revival. The Altamonte Hotel was also built that same year. So they built a courthouse and a hotel at the same time. So it's
that way. You know, people can go to court, figure out what's going on, and then the jury can just go next door and spend a couple nights trying to figure out whether they're guilty or not guilty, Homer Simpson style. And, voila. This was a terrible joke.
Very
Keep
terrible.
Going.
So Fayetteville actually grew really rapidly in the 19th century thanks to the coal industry. So the coal industry was a huge boom for them. The mining industry declined in the late 20th century. So like the 80s and 90s, it started to just kind of just fall apart. The economy now is almost based on all tourism. So it's all because of the historic things around it, and like because there are a lot of
Civil War reenactments.
That, and there's also a lot of like kayaking, fishing, hunting, and all that in the area, and it's right along the Appalachian. So
I gotta say, Civil War reenactment in that town must be so confusing.
Yeah.
Who wins this week?
So this is the Battle of Fayetteville. Which one?
Yeah.
Thursday.
So, popular activities are whitewater rafting, fishing, mountain biking, and climbing, and rock climbing in the region.
I guess they did stick with the white people.
Yeah.
The white.
You guess.
Wow.
The word white showed up.
So, the New River Gorge Bridge hosts the annual Bridge Day, which is held the third Saturday of October. The New River Gorge Bridge is the longest arc bridge in the Western Hemisphere. Its creation is made traveling on US 19 much easier, so it like cut 45 minutes from the original route. But I just love that they have an entire day dedicated to this bridge.
I was just about to say that. Like, we're celebrating today the ability to walk over water a lot like Jesus, but not.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about a bridge like the card game bridge for a moment. I was like, is this just a day for all the grand?
Everyone shows up on the bridge with
Playing
tables
bridge.
and play bridge.
Oh my god.
It's like those chess tables in like big parks there.
Like I said,
Bunch of old people just standing there being like, it's Bridge Day. I think they got it mixed up.
Yeah, like, honestly, yeah, they're just throwing the cards around and they're saying bridge. I don't know how this game plays.
So, a new little thing that I wanted to do because I really like doing these on the overflow and because I really like finding these little things to kind of set the scene of where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Reviews.
Oh,
So I've got a 3-star review.
Of this bridge?
No, I wish. Posted June 19th, 2015. The area is absolutely beautiful. The education system is slowly getting worse as the district loses money and trust from the public.
I mean, a little bit of A, a little bit of B.
Dude, it's a 3-star, so it's got to be kind of So,
wow, this place is great, except for this political problem.
so due to lack of opportunity, people choose not to move here. If I could do it all over again, I would probably choose to live somewhere else. Not because of the people or lack of things to do, which you just said. Like, not because of the people or lack of things to do, but because of the lack of opportunity, which, is things to do. Like, dreamers such as myself are seen as aliens.
Wait, what am I?
Yeah. If I could, I would change the area for the better. All they need is a leader to lead them in the right direction. I feel like he's about to start a revolution. I will be your leader.
Well, honestly, they're used to revolutionary wars.
And now the town is owned by Bob.
Yeah.
The third.
Bob the Third.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Bob the Third. Nice to meet you all.
Don't mind my
I hired the
fingers.
Canadian handyman.
I hired this Canadian handyman. Oh, how's it going? Knock, knock, knock.
So,
Where did he get that mallet?
now I
The
can think of,
Canadian Mexican.
yeah, now I can think about is him having like a ratchet and be like,
Got it.
No, it's crank. It's crank, crank, crank.
All right, so another 3-star. There are a lot of policemen here, more than needed, and they don't care if the drug problem. They mainly just set speed traps. It's generally safe, other than people trying to break into cars at night. So a lot of drugs, and the police don't care, but they're going to catch you for speeding, and they also will not give a shit if your car gets broken into.
Yeah, I like the person says it's mostly safe except for the car thieves.
Yeah.
Except for the large amount of drug abuse that they just talked about.
Yeah.
That's perfectly okay.
What I love is that I was checking the 1 and 0 star and like the 2-star reports for these.
Yeah.
And they were like so weak, just being like, I hate it here. This place sucks. Blah, blah, blah. It was just so like, but the 3-star reviews were like gold. Like they just had all these great ones. Another 3-star review. This state is in the top for prescription drug abuse. This is not the only drug abuse that goes on here, though. There are niches of people who are healthy and about in the outdoor scene. The rest are caught up in their lives or too bored and end up on drugs. I feel like there's a lot of drugs here.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Nothing better to do.
So, because we've kind of set the scene for where we're going to be, let's talk about Giorgio Sodder.
Better be on drugs.
He was born in Tula, Sardinia, Italy in 1895. So I think this is a little before the massive drug abuse problems.
Oh, okay.
Tula is a small municipality, which even in today's estimate is roughly about 1,600 people. So not a lot of people from here.
Mm.
In 1908, Giorgio and his brother immigrated to the United States, but his brother returned home immediately after they both cleared customs at Ellis Island. All I can think about is that 1908 would put him at 13 years old. His brother took him to the country, and then the U.S. the U.S. customs agent at Ellis Island was probably like, "Okay, you're both good to go." And he's like, "Okay, see you later, back to Italy." Fucking ditched the kid.
Your problem now, bitches.
I imagine it was more like they walked through the gate and went, "Nope."
Yeah.
That's what we wanted to
do. You guys walked off the boat and you were like, change to this?
God damn it!
The air's fresher.
And then, your people was in the background going,
first time,
at least you come from somewhere else. Somewhere else.
They just stole everything of ours.
And They stole us too.
What's worse, they stole your land or they stole you?
Yes.
So Giorgio Americanized his name to George Sodder and took up some work on the Pennsylvania railroads, mainly carrying water and supplies. So he would just
didn't work with metal.
No. Wow. So after a few years, he managed to secure some work as a driver in Smithers, West Virginia, which is another small town with a population hovering just over 900 people. And it's named for a river, which I was very disappointed in.
You were hoping it was named after the Simpsons character? I don't think Simpsons was invented.
No, I don't think so either.
Smithers. Actually, that wasn't a bad one.
No, that was actually not too bad. So before, just around this time, though, he, like a couple years later, he ended up starting his own trucking company. And the company started off hauling dirt to, like, construction sites to, like, fill in the holes and whatever else that they were putting together. And then, because the coal industry was really, really booming, he actually advanced into coal distribution. So he would haul coal places for them. One day, George walked into a local store called the Music Box, and this is where he met Jenny Capriani, the daughter of the owner of the Music Box. Jenny's family had also immigrated from Italy when she was 3. The two married, and both were not forthcoming about why their families left Italy, preferring not to discuss it at all. So there's like a lot of secretives in this, and all I can think about is like a mafia thing.
Yeah,
like,
it's always the mafia.
Yeah.
They're olive oil smugglers.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next thing we know, like, what's his face is in there somewhere. Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
Or, oh God, I can't remember his name.
Danny?
The Godfather.
Oh, I never thought.
Oh.
Marlon Brando.
I was just about to say it, Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
Anyways, George and Jenny settled in Fayetteville, West Virginia, in a 2-story timber frame house that was about 3.2 kilometers or 2 miles outside of town. Fayetteville at the time had a really large population of Italian immigrants, so this was a real ideal place for them to live. In 1923, the couple welcomed their first child, and as the years progressed, they would have 9 more.
Whoa. Catholic?
That's,
My.
my math is correct. That is 10.
Yeah, 10 children.
Jeez.
So George's business prospered, and the family became, quote, one of the most respected middle-class families around, end quote. That was according to some local guy.
That's
3 stars.
Literally in the thing, they don't attribute it to anyone in particular, just some local.
Some local guy. He gave them 3 stars.
Yeah, 3 stars. He's also pissed somebody broke into his car. Police aren't doing anything about it.
They're just slowing him down.
Yeah. So, despite being well respected, George was very strongly opinionated, and his vocalizations on these opinions would often leave him alienated. So George was especially vocal on his opinion of Benito Mussolini, who at one point we'll talk about because he was a dictator. And this bred a lot of arguments with others who viewed Mussolini as a saving grace for Italy because it was his cult of personality. Like,
weren't they broke too beforehand?
Yeah, Italy was in a lot of shambles, and they got gypped in the First World War because they did win.
They did get screwed.
They won, but they didn't gain any actual territory that was significant or anything. So, and they didn't get any reparations. So Mussolini kind of changed that because they're broke, even though they were a victor, and it was about getting Italian pride back. So I can see why Italian Americans would idolize that because they're still technically Italian. But so the last of the Sodder children was born in 1943, a little girl named Sylvia. At this time, their second oldest, Joe, had gone off to fight in World War II. In 1944, Mussolini was deposed and executed, to which George was very open about making comments. And this, again, would bring a great deal of displeasure amongst his neighbors because he was really against him, saw him as a fascist dictator. In October 1945, a visiting life insurance salesman, after being told by George several times and being shown around, warned George that his house would go up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed.
Jesus.
Oh.
Attributing all of this to the dirty remarks you have been making about Mussolini. So an insurance salesman came up and was like, yo.
Get the fuck out of here.
You better get some life insurance because shit's gonna happen. And we provide that.
With a knife.
Yes, we provide life insurance with a knife.
We'll sign it in blood.
So
Forgot you were the devil.
another visitor to the house, ostensibly seeking work, took the occasion to go around back and warned George that a pair of his fuse boxes would, quote, cause a fire someday.
Oh.
End quote. George was puzzled by the observation since he had just rewired the entire electrical components of his house when he installed a new electric stove. And a local electric company had said it was completely safe. So he didn't see why some random handyman would have something to say about this. In the weeks before Christmas of 1945, George's older sons had also noticed a strange car parked along the main road going through town, its occupants watching the younger Sodder children as they returned from school.
Well, that's super creepy.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Sodders celebrated Christmas Eve, 1945, and Marion, the oldest daughter, had been working at the dime store in downtown Fayetteville, which every time I think of a dime store, all I can think is, like, you go in and everything's a dime. And then I think about how, like, I would love for that to be a thing now.
Yeah.
I was literally just about to say the same thing. Like, I was thinking about, like, how we have dollar stores now. And our dollar stores are no longer dollar stores anymore. So, somehow we're in a weird little tangent, and I'm filling in the space.
So, anyways, she had been working there, and she decided to surprise her three younger sisters, Martha, who was 12, Jenny, who was 8, and Betty, who was 5, with new toys that she had bought for them as gifts.
Aww.
So she worked at the store, and I guess at the end she was like, hey, can I just use my paycheck to buy these toys for...
I was actually going to make a joke asking what they got for Christmas. So, like, the fact that you said this is kind of a little funny to me.
So, the younger children were so excited that they asked their mother if they could stay up past what would be their usual bedtime, to which Jenny did agree. At 10 p.m., Jenny told them that they could stay up a little bit later as long as the two oldest boys were still awake, 14-year-old Maurice and 9-year-old Louis. They remembered to put the cows in and feed the chickens before going to bed themselves. So they went out, they were like, okay, as long as they're still awake, like doing their chores, then you can stay up. So as soon as they're done their chores, they're going to come in and go to bed. You guys are going to have to go to bed too.
Mm.
So, George and the two oldest boys, John 23 and George Jr. 16.
Oh, I thought his name was John.
Like the Bible verse?
I'm like, are they that Bible?
Yeah, John 23 and George Jr. 16. Because, George Jr. is a disciple name.
Okay, wait.
No, if they were that religious, they would do John 19, if anything.
All I can think to myself is George Jr. the disciple.
George Jr. 13. Thou shalt have Canadian Mexicans a part of your property.
All I can think is this is
Save you money.
this is the gospel of George Jr. Like, the worst thing is he'd have a slight Italian accent.
He would be Pope later.
George Jr. the third.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they had spent all day working with their father, and they were already asleep. So everybody's slowly falling asleep. After reminding the children of those remaining chores, Jenny took 2-year-old Sylvia upstairs and went to bed. So the telephone rang at 12:30 a.m., and Jenny woke up and went downstairs to answer it. The caller was a woman whose voice she didn't recognize, asking for a name she was not familiar with a sound of laughter and clinking glasses in the background. Jenny told the caller that she had reached the wrong number, and later the woman's Recalling the woman's weird laugh, Jenny hung up and returned to bed. As she did, she noticed the lights were still on and the curtains were not drawn. Two things the children normally attended to when they stayed up later than their parents. The children stayed up later than their children.
You know, it's funky when they do that.
So Marion had actually fallen asleep on the couch, and that was bad. So she had fallen asleep on the couch, and so Jenny assumed the other children who had stayed up had gone back up to the attic where they slept. Because when you have 10 kids, you gotta fucking shove them into somewhere. Like,
Get in the corner.
You just put them all in the attic, and then you forget about them.
Fucking fish heads once a week.
Do your chores.
And you gotta toss them in, too. You can't, like...
Just open your mouth, it'll fall in. So she closed the curtains, turned out the light, and returned to bed. At 1 a.m., so she woke up at 12:30, and now it's 1 a.m., Jenny was again awakened by the sound of an object hitting the roof with a loud bang and then a rolling noise. After hearing nothing further, she went back to sleep.
Wow.
Which, in all honesty, if I heard something hit the roof and roll...
Rolling parts.
Is someone bowling on my roof?
Yeah, like, what the fuck? Although, if I am that tired and I just been woken up twice in the night, I might just be like, fuck it. Like,
They rolled off, it doesn't matter.
If they murder me, at least I get more sleep.
You know what? Maybe Santa dropped his beard. Like, so after hearing nothing further, she went back to sleep, and after another hour and a half, she woke up again, smelling smoke.
Oh.
When she got up again, she found that the room George used for his office was on fire around the telephone line and the fuse box. Jenny woke him, and he turned and woke his older sons. So now all the oldest people are awake. Both parents and four of their children, Marion, Sylvia, John, and George Jr., escaped the house. George Jr. carrying his gospel with him.
He's just filling it out as he goes.
These are pumped.
So none of the older kids went to look for the younger ones?
So I think they thought that everybody was going to try and escape, right? Like, so they frantically yelled to the children upstairs, but heard no response. They could not go up there as the stairway itself was already on fire. John said in his first police interview after the fire that he went up into the attic to alert his siblings sleeping there, although he later changed his story saying that he only called up there and did not actually see them. So what I think he probably did was he probably ran up the stairs like, guys, there's a fire, and then ran out thinking they would have heard him. So efforts to find aid and rescue the children were unexpectedly complicated. The phone did not work, so Marion ran to the neighbor's house to call the fire department. A driver on the nearby road had also seen the flames and called from a nearby tavern. They too were unsuccessful, either because they could not reach the operator or because the phone turned out to be broken. So
What?
I'm guessing one of them couldn't reach the operator, and the other one, I'm sure the tavern was the broken phone. Like they were just like, some drunk like broke the phone. Like,
he got really into that, and he just ripped it out of the wall.
fire department?
Fire?
So,
Where's the fire? Give me a second. I'll take you to it.
but just follow me.
Heroic music.
So you're a hero, Tommy.
What's that song they play in The Other Guys when they're falling off the building?
Oh, that's amazing.
Haven't seen it.
Oh, you at least watch the first 10 minutes.
That's so good.
So either the neighbor or the passing motorist was eventually successful in reaching the fire department from another phone in the center of town. So the neighbor...
You might as well just go to the fire department at that point.
So George had tried to save his kids, breaking a window, and he broke a window and re-entered the house, slicing a swath of skin from his arm. He could see nothing through the smoke and fire, which had swept through the entire downstairs floors, including the living room and dining room, kitchen, office, and his and Jenny's bedroom. He took frantic stock of what he knew. 2-year-old Sylvia, who had been sleeping in the crib in their bedroom, was safe outside, as was 17-year-old Marion and the 2 sons, 23-year-old John and 16-year-old George Jr. and his gospel, who had fled to the upstairs the bedroom they shared, singeing their hair on the way out. So when they escaped, they must have run to the stairs and then be like, "There's a fire," and then realized that they can't get downstairs, so they just jumped out a fucking window.
Jesus.
So he figured Maurice, Martha, Louise, Jenny, and Betty still had to be up there. I know, that's so many of them.
It's almost a tongue twister.
Cowering in 2 bedrooms on either end of the hallway.
Cast of Archie.
Fucking Jughead's up there. Guys, I think there's a fire, but my burgers are nice and warm now. Then Moose just busts through the door. I'm here, guys.
No, my hat.
It's part of me now.
So it was separated. The 2 bedrooms were separated by a staircase, which was now engulfed in flames. He raced back outside, hoping to reach them through an upstairs window, but the ladder that he'd always kept propped against the house was strangely missing. An idea struck, though. He would drive one of his 2 coal trucks up to the house, climb atop, and reach the window. Which, honestly, that's a bright idea. I would have never thought of that. He would have... But even though they'd been functioning perfectly the day before, neither one would start now.
What?
He ransacked his mind for another option. He tried scooping up water from a rain barrel, but found it frozen solid. Because it's December.
I like the term of ransacking your mind.
Yeah.
you just beat it up until an idea comes out.
So 5 of his children were stuck somewhere inside those great whipping ropes of smoke. He didn't even notice that his arm was slick with blood by this point, and his voice hurt from screaming their names. So he's freaking the fuck out.
Yeah.
And this whole time, he's not hearing any response from any of his kids as anybody's calling out to them.
Yeah, but would you hear anything?
You probably could.
Yeah.
If you're in that state, though, you might... It depends how he reacts to things, because I don't know how I would react.
Dead cold winter and a burning fire, all you're going to hear is the fire.
So, frustrated, the 6 Sodders who had escaped had no choice but to watch the house burn down and collapse over the next 45 minutes.
Ooh.
They assumed the other 5 children had perished in the blaze. The fire department, low on manpower due to the war, and relying on individual firefighters to call each other, did not respond until later that morning. So the fire started at 1:30. Yeah, so the fire started at 1:30 in the morning. They didn't get there till basically way late in the morning. Yeah. Chief F.J. Morris said the next day that the already slow response had further hampered his inability to drive the fire truck, requiring that he wait until someone who could drive would be available. So they didn't even have enough drivers. I have a feeling it was Christmas and he got drunk. The firefighters, one of whom was a brother of Jenny herself, so the mom. So this is one of their uncles. Could do little but look through the ashes that were left of the Sodders' basement. By 10 a.m., Morris told the Sodders that they had not found any bones, as might be expected with the other children having been inside of the house when it burned. According to another account, they did find a few bone fragments and internal organs, but chose not to tell the family.
What?
What was the reasoning for that be?
I'm not sure. It was noted. It has also been noted by some of fire professionals, so people who look at these crime scenes and so on.
Fire investigators.
That their search was cursory at best. So they basically just kind of poked around and then went, "We're not finding anything," and then moved on.
I mean, drunk post-Christmas after completely fucking everything up?
Yeah.
Bury it.
So, nevertheless, Morris believed that the 5 children were completely unaccounted for, but he did say that they died in the fire, suggesting it had been hot enough to burn their bodies completely. Which,
Unlikely.
I'm going to say this. It'd have to be an intensely hot fire.
Yes.
I mean, you'd need a fuel source.
Yeah.
Wood won't do it.
Yeah, that was that's crazy though to lose 50% of your kids.
Yeah.
Think about that. He has 10 kids. half of your kids are gone now.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So, Morris told George to leave the site undisturbed so the state fire marshal's office could do a better investigation in the morning. So, after 4 days, George and his wife could not bear the site anymore, so he bulldozed 5 feet of dirt over the site with the intention of converting it into a memorial garden for his lost children.
Mm-hmm.
The local coroner convened with an inquest the next day, which held that the fire was an accident caused by faulty wiring. Among the jurors was the man who had threatened George that his house would burn down and his children would be destroyed in retribution for his anti-Mussolini remarks. That's suspicious as fuck.
Or a small town.
Yeah, well...
Yeah.
Death certificates for the 5 children were issued on December 30th, so less than 5 days. The local newspaper contradicted itself, stating that all the bodies had been found, but then later in the same story reporting that only part of one body was recovered. George and Jenny were too grief-stricken to attend the funeral on January 2nd, 1946, although their surviving children did. So, this is a big thing. There's no bodies to bury. Not long afterwards, as they began to rebuild their lives, the Sodders started to question all of the findings. They wondered why, if it had been caused by an electrical problem, the family's Christmas lights had remained on throughout the early stages of the fire. The power should have gone out. Then they found the ladder that had been missing from the side of the house that night, which he always kept right by the side of the house. It was 75 feet away from the house in an embankment, as if it was thrown into a ditch.
Are we thinking that rolling sound was a Molotov?
Something,
and it didn't break on the roof, and it only broke once it fell off.
Ground.
Yeah. So a telephone repairman told the Sodders that the house phone line had not been burned through in the fire, which it had initially been thought because they couldn't call out. It had actually been cut by somebody who was willing to climb 14 feet up the pole and then reach 2 feet away to do it.
Probably using that ladder.
So somebody used the ladder, cut the fucking phone line. So a man whom neighbors had seen stealing a block and tackle from the property around the time of the fire was identified and arrested. He admitted to the theft of this and claimed that he had been the one who had cut the phone line, thinking it was a power line, but denied having anything to do with the fire.
Did he provide motivation?
No.
But why did he cut it thinking it was a power line?
Who knows?
You'd probably kill yourself in the process.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But more importantly, why did you think?
Yeah, why were you cutting
That's why I asked what the motivation was.
So, however, no record identifying the suspect exists. And why he would have wanted to cut the utility line for the house when stealing the block and tackle, never been explained. So, it's just kind of... Jenny had said in 1968 that he had cut the power line, she and her husband, that if he had cut the power line, she and her husband, along with the 4 children, would have never been able to make it out of the house. So, if he had managed to cut the power line and the fire happened, they wouldn't have made it out. Because they wouldn't have really known.
Well, there's no lights.
Yeah. Jenny had trouble accepting Morris's belief that all traces of the children's body had been completely burned away, which I don't blame. Just based on my own knowledge of how a human body, getting rid of them kind of comes from.
Yeah, bones are pretty resilient.
Not even just that, our skin is made not to burn because we're made of so much water. So we actually try to extinguish ourselves naturally.
I only ever heard tallow factories burning whole bodies. That's it.
Yeah,
everything else explodes.
I actually had no idea that about that. Actually,
yeah, the water and oil, the fluids that we secrete inside of our bodies, are actually made to douse fires. It's kind of weird.
Interesting.
Even if your fat caught on fire, you yourself wouldn't stay on fire.
Yeah,
that's interesting. The reason I was bringing up the bones is I was thinking of when they put like a body or corpse in acid or something like that, it dissolves the body, but the bones are usually there for quite a while.
Yeah, because they're thick and the calcium really goes.
Well, they're just acid resistant. They're already ossified.
Yeah,
the acid's attacking every part of it, and it just does nothing.
So
bones are acid resistant
to an extent, yeah.
Huh.
Partially because of the fact that, like you said, it's ossifized, and that calcium buildup because through that process, actually calcium, because it's a base,
turns it into
stop
water.
The acid. It like deteriorates the acid entirely.
An acid plus a base equals water, which again puts out fire.
Huh. Cool.
We're learning a lot today.
Yeah.
Science.
It's funny because I had a conversation the other day with Lana about how if she ever like died in some freak accident because of my search history, the police would immediately suspect me. Like,
I beg to differ.
So that's all I can think to myself is like, you know, she trips and falls and smashes her head, and I'm like, I don't know what happened. She just all of a sudden fell and smashed her head, and he'd be like, yeah, but your search history also talks about a lot. You've been researching this for a while.
We've been publishing it.
Yeah.
Have you met my friend, Token?
I don't know these people. I don't know what you're talking about.
He's associated.
Accessory.
So many of the household appliances that were inside of the house were found and still recognizable in the ash. So that's a big reason why she was like, I don't think so. Because if the bones would have been, like, if everything would have been completely, like, vaporized, then why are the household appliances still basically recognizable? Like, there was also fragments of the tin roof that were still completely recognizable.
Tin was there.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So
Tin is a fairly low melting point.
she contrasted the results of the fire with a newspaper account of a similar house fire that she had read around the same time that had killed a family of 7, and skeletal remains had been found for all the victims in that case. So why was our fire hot enough, but that one wasn't? Kind of thing.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like
Cover
they
up.
not cover up. I think they just were lazy.
Buried it.
So Jenny also burned a small pile of animal bones to see if they would be completely consumed, and none, of course, were. So these are just animal bones, like probably like chickens and things like that. Didn't cook away. So,
But at least they had chicken.
Who likes char?
so an employee at the local crematorium that she contacted told her that human bone remained even after the bodies had been burned at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,090 degrees Celsius for 2 hours.
That's insane.
Far longer and hotter than the house fire could have ever been. So at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours, you still can't get rid of the bones.
You need a forge, pretty much.
Yeah.
So the Sodder's truck failure also was considered, and this George believed that it had been tampered with, maybe by the guy who stole the block and tackle and cut the phone line. However, one of his son-in-laws told the Charleston Gazette in 2013 that he had come to believe that Sodder and his sons might have, in their haste to start the trucks, flooded the engine. Because it's not like it is today. You actually had to like crank it, pump, like prime it entirely and stuff.
Look
they
up
might have just been like,
carburetors.
and like all of a sudden.
I actually knew about that stuff.
I know what carburetors are.
So, some accounts have suggested that the wrong number phone call to the Sodder's house might have also somehow been connected to the fire and disappearance. However, investigators later located the woman who made the call and confirmed that she had just called the wrong number. However, in my own mind, that makes a really interesting thing because she received a phone call at 12:30. So the guy would have had to cut the line after 12:30.
No, it could have been as he cut and then crossed the lines.
What do you mean? Because if she received the phone call, the phone line can't be cut.
Yeah, a lot of people do partial cuts because they're using shitty clippers.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. It would have to have been around 12:30 or something. This could have been like early in the day. Whoever set the house on fire would have had to cross paths with this guy. Or
I see.
this guy did it. Like, as spring approached, the Sodders, as they said they would, planted the memorial garden and the soil bulldozed over the house. Jenny tended to it very carefully for the rest of her life. However, in early 1946, the family got a reinforcement of their beliefs that the children that they immortalized that night were in fact alive somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Evidence emerged that supported that they believed that the fire had not been started by an electrical fault, but instead had been set deliberately. The driver of a bus had passed through Fayetteville late Christmas Eve and had seen some people throwing balls of fire at the house.
Didn't think to mention it? Jesus.
A few months later,
just the local wizards.
When the snow melted, Sylvia found... So Sylvia, by this point, would be 3. She had found a small, hard, dark green, rubber ball-like object in the brush nearby. George, recalling his wife's account of a loud thump on the roof before the fire, and said that this thing looked like a pineapple bomb hand grenade, or some other incendiary device that would have been used in combat. So I'm guessing what it was, instead of a Molotov, I'm thinking it's probably some sort of like, they doused it with something and threw it onto the thing, and it's like a ball.
Probably a pitch tar bomb.
Yeah.
With a stick handle.
The family later claimed that, contrary to the fire marshal's conclusion, that the fire had started on the roof. Although, by then, there was no way to prove it because they bulldozed the fucking house. Other witnesses claimed to have seen the children themselves. One woman who had been watching the fire from the road said she had seen some of them peering out of a passing car while the house was burning. Another woman at a rest stop between Fayetteville and Charleston said that she had served them breakfast the next morning and noted the presence of a car with a Florida license plate at the rest stop parking lot.
It's always Florida.
So the Sodders hired a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley, and he looked into the case. Tinsley learned that the insurance salesman who had threatened them with the fire a year before over the anti-Mussolini sentiments had been on the coroner's jury, like I said, and ruled the fire an accident and told this to the Sodders. He also learned that rumors around Fayetteville were, despite his reports to the Sodders that no remains had been found in the ashes, Morris had found a heart, which he later packed into a metal box and secretly buried.
What?
Ooh. So,
like, if you believe in any religion at all, this is bad.
Funny you should mention religion.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
You could have got courage from that heart.
Yeah. Morridge apparently confessed this to a local minister who confirmed it to George.
Not children.
George and Tinsley went to Morris and confronted him with this. Morris agreed to show the two where he buried the metal box, and they dug it up. They took it inside and and they took it to a local funeral director who examined it and told them that it was a fresh beef liver that had never been exposed to fire. Why is burying fucking beef livers?
This prank's gonna be great.
Did somebody lace the river with LSD or something?
I have no idea. Later, more rumors circulated, and Morris afterwards admitted that the box with the liver had indeed not come from the fire originally. No shit. And he had supposedly placed it there in hopes that the Sodder would find it and be satisfied that the missing children had indeed died in the fire. So he did this as a way of, like, if they come knocking, then at least there's a secret and I can show it to them and they'll believe that it was one of their kids and maybe they'll stop poking around about this. George did not wait for any reports of sightings to come in. Sometimes he just went and found them himself. So, like, he would go and look for people who had seen his children. After seeing a girl in a magazine picture at a young ballet dancer's studio in New York City who looked just like one of his missing daughters, Betty, he drove all the way to the girl's school and made repeated demands to see the girl for himself. That was always refused.
Well, yeah, but you gotta feel for that.
Yeah. He also tried to get interest from the FBI to investigate this, considered it a kidnapping. And Director J. Edgar Hoover personally responded to his letters, quote, although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come within the investigative jurisdiction of this bureau, end quote. So basically, J. Edgar Hoover was like, take a hike.
Given state and federal tensions back then, he might not have been able to.
Yeah, well, He also was on a manhunt for like a bunch of bank robbers. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but you can use that investigation to piggyback into anything else. Like it gives you jurisdiction, which like states were afraid of.
So if the local authorities requested the Bureau's assistance, he added, he would direct agents to assist, but the police service and fire departments declined to do so. So the police service and the fire departments are basically like, we don't feel it needs to be investigated, even though there's all this fishy shit going on. So we're not going to ask for help. Like, in August 1949, George was able to persuade Oscar Hunter, a Washington, D.C. pathologist, to supervise a new search through the dirt of the house site. After a very thorough search, artifacts including a dictionary that belonged to the children's and some coins had been found.
And the gospel.
Yeah. George Jr.'s gospel was there. He buried it in the dirt. Several small bone fragments were unearthed and determined to have been human vertebrae. The bone fragments were sent to Marshall T. Newman, who was a specialist from the Smithsonian Institution. He confirmed them to be lumbar vertebrae from the same person. Since the traverse recesses are fused, the age of the individual at death would have been 16 or 17 years old. The top limit age would have been about 22, since the centra would normally be fused at 23, and it was still unfused at this time. Thus, giving the age range, it was not likely to have been the bones of any of the missing children, since the oldest, Maurice, had been 14 at the time when this disappearance happened. So, Newman added that the bones also showed no sign of exposure to flame, which is kind of creepy on its own. Where's this fucking human vertebrae coming from?
Yeah,
whose body is this, and why is it there?
Why is there a bone here? Like,
it's almost like there was another murder that happened before, buried under the house.
Stacking crimes now.
Yeah.
Conspiracy.
He agreed that it was very strange that the bones that they found were the only ones found, since the wood fire, a wood fire of such short duration would have left full skeletons of all the children behind. So again, another expert's being like, there's no way this would have happened. The reports concluded the vertebrae had instead most likely come from the dirt that George had bulldozed over the site. So wherever he got the dirt, this is where this came from. So there's some fucking body. There's another pile of dirt out there.
Jesus.
Later, Tinsley confirmed that the bone fragments had come from a cemetery in nearby Mount Hope, and could not explain why they had taken it from there or how they came to be at the fire site. The Smithsonian returned the bone fragment to George on September 1949. Here's your bone back.
Yeah, here you go. Here's that spinal cord you asked for.
Yeah. So the investigation attracted a lot of attention. The West Virginia legislature held 2 hearings about the case in 1950. Governor Patterson and a state police superintendent, W.E. Burchett, told the Sodders that the case was...
What?
Yeah, Burchett.
Okay, yeah.
Burchett. This whole case is Burchett.
I mean, it really is.
So they told the Sodders that the case was, quote, hopeless, and closed it at a state level.
Well, that's Burchett.
Yeah. So the FBI decided it had jurisdiction as possible interstate kidnapping, but dropped the case after 2 years due to fruitless leads. So basically, the FBI did jump in eventually and tried, but nothing. So at the end of the official efforts to resolve the case, the Sodders did not give up hope. They had flyers printed up with with pictures of the children, offering $5,000, soon doubled to be $10,000. For information that would have settled the case for even just one of the children. So you just give us enough information to tell us about one of the kids, and you get $10,000. Like,
and what year was this again?
1950.
Wow.
So that's a lot.
Yeah. So in 1952, they put up a billboard at the side of the house, and another one along U.S. Route 60 near Ansted, with the same information. So they're just advertising this. Give us information on our kid, we'll pay you money.
How are they affording all this?
Well, he's a prosperous businessman.
Yes.
So, it would become in time a landmark for traffic in Fayetteville along the U.S. State Route 16.
What a tragic thing to be known for.
Yeah, to be a landmark over these missing kids. The family's efforts soon brought another reported sighting of the children after the fire. Ida Crutchfield, a woman who ran Charleston's hotel, claimed to have seen the children approximately a week afterwards. Quote, I do not remember the exact date, she said. The children had come in around midnight with 2 men and 2 women, all of who appeared to be of Italian extraction. That's a quote. Italian extraction.
Like a SWAT team? Move! Take them!
Hey, oh!
Hey, oh! Take them! Yeah. Italian racism!
So when she attempted to speak to the children, quote, one of the men looked at me in a hostile manner. He turned around and began rapidly in Italian. So he just started, like, rapid firing her, like, words in Italian. Like... So immediately the whole party...
Meatball to be shouted out.
Meatball, pizza, salami.
So immediately the whole party stopped talking to me, end quote. She recalled that they left the hotel really early the next morning. Investigators today do not, however, consider her story credible, as she had only first seen photos of the children 2 years after the fire, 5 years before she came forward. So essentially she waited 5 years to give this story. So it probably to try and drive people to the hotel because the kids were here at some point.
How is that not a crime?
That is so cruel.
So George followed up leads in person, traveling to all areas. Like I said, a woman in St. Louis, Missouri, claimed that Martha had been held in a convent there. A bar patron in Texas claimed to have overheard 2 people making incriminating statements about a fire that happened on Christmas Eve in West Virginia some years before. None of those proved of any significance. No. When George heard later that a relative of Jenny's in Florida had children that looked similar to his, the relative had to prove that the children were his own before George was satisfied. Could you imagine going to your wife's relative and being like, "Do you steal my fucking kids?" Like, I want you to prove these are your fucking kids. Like,
at the same time, their zeal for trying to figure out what was happening was quite public.
So, in 1967, George went to the Houston area to investigate another tip. A woman there had written to the family saying that Lewis had revealed his true identity to her one night after having too much to drink. She believed that he and Morris had both were living in Texas somewhere. However, George and his son-in-law, Grover Paxton, were unable to speak with her. Grover Paxton is actually married to Sylvia, so this is so many years later that Sylvia's full-grown adult and married. Like, wow. That's how long these kids have been fucking missing.
So most of these kids would be like...
long into adulthood. They'd be almost 30.
And they wouldn't remember it either.
Jesus.
Most of them were at.
So police were able to help them find the 2 men that she had indicated, but they denied being the missing sons. So they just went to these 2 guys like, "You guys my kids?" Like, nope.
Are you my son?
Yeah. So Paxton said years later that doubts about the denial lingered in George's mind for the rest of his life. So even though they said, "We're not your kids, man," George was like, "I think those are my kids," and they just were lying. Like, another letter that they received that same year, so 1968, brought the Sodders what they believed was the most credible evidence that at least Lewis was still alive. One day, Jenny found in the mail a letter addressed to her, postmarked in Central City, Kentucky, with no return address. Inside was a picture of a young man of about 30 who strongly resembled Lewis, and I have seen this photo. I'll post it on like social media. And he does look a lot like Lewis based on the pictures.
You knew him in person?
No, there's a lot of pictures of these kids. So he was around 30, really resembled Lewis. On the back of the letter was written, "Lewis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, ill boys, A90132 or 35. Wait,
what?
I feel like it's a code.
These are my coordinates.
Yeah. I just love that it's like A90132 or 35. Like he just drawn 32 or maybe 35.
That's think it might have been that the person that was investigating this just couldn't tell if it was a 2 or a 5.
Sure. But the family hired another private investigator to go to Central City and look into the letter, but he never reported back to the Sodders, and they were unable to locate him afterwards, so they fucking paid him money to go and look, and he just
vanished.
Oh.
Now, there's 2 scenarios there. 1, he just took the fuck off and stole their money. 2, he came on to the conspiracy and got too close and was killed off.
Yeah.
Oh.
Especially if it's like the Italian mafia and like that old woman from that inn was actually right and was like, they just screamed at me Italian. So then he comes across as like, you guys are the kids, and all they hear is, hey, what are you doing here?
Italian.
Meatball salami.
Rigatoni. No, this is my brother, Rigatoni.
That's fettuccine over there. We're gonna make some spaghetti out of you.
Guys having fun?
All I picture right now is like Mario and Luigi.
Any lower.
No.
And it's just fucking...
Hey, I work at a pizza place. I'm allowed to make these jokes.
I have an Italian friend. That doesn't necessarily mean that I can make Italian.
That's the equivalent of... I have a black friend, so I can say the N-word.
No, you can't.
That's my point.
Just to be clear.
I really just want to scream it at you for the sake of being like in defiance. Like,
Cancelled! As an executive producer, I say don't do that.
Who's
N-word!
Who's defiance?
what I love though is that on the reservation close to where I grew up, they all use that word to talk to each other. I'm like, are you guys aware of what that word is actually to represent?
Nope.
It does not talk about us.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Off topic.
the picture gave them hope anyways, and they added it to the billboard, leaving Central City off of it and the other published information out of fear that Lewis might come to harm. Because, they sent that investigator out and he didn't come back, so maybe Lewis will get in fucking trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So, they put in an enlargement of the picture over their fireplace, though. So they got this picture blown up and then, put it on their fireplace as if it was a family photo.
Oh.
That is not...
That's so sad.
No.
So George admitted to the Charleston Gazette-Mail late next year, so 1969, that the lack of the information had been, quote, like hitting a rock wall. We can't go any further. He nevertheless vowed to continue. Time is running out for us, he admitted in the interview, but we only want to know if they did die in the fire. We want to be convinced. Otherwise, we want to know what happened to them. George Sodder died later that year in 1969. Oh. Jenny and her surviving children, except for John, who never talked about the night of the fire except to say that the family should accept it and get on with their lives, continued to seek answers to their questions. So out of the surviving kids and out of the surviving family members, out of the 6 that survived, basically 5 of them are still looking for answers, but John's just like, guys, it's just done.
Yeah.
After George's death, Jenny stayed in the family home, putting up fencing around it, adding additional rooms. For the rest of her life, she wore black in mourning and tended to the garden on the site of the former house. After her death in 1989, the family finally took the weathered and worn billboard down. Oh. The surviving Sodder children, joined by their own children, continue to publicize the case and investigate leads. So they're still looking into this. They, along with the older Fayetteville residents, have theorized that the Sicilian mafia was trying to extort money from George, and the children may have been taken by someone who knew about the planned arson and said that they would be safe if they left the house. They possibly were taken back to Italy. If the children had survived all those years and were unaware that their parents and sibling had survived too. The family believes that they may have avoided contact in order to keep any harm from coming to them, which I think is kind of far-fetched, but also this was a really Italian, it was a hotbed for Italian activity.
It's a lot of extrapolation from too little data, though.
Yeah. As of 2015, Sylvia Sodder Paxton, so the youngest, and is the only surviving Sodder sibling who was in the house of that night, because they've all passed away since then. She's the only one still left alive. She says that her earliest memory was the night of the fire. Quote, "I was the last one of the kids to leave home," she recalled in 2013. She and her father often stayed up late, talking about what might have happened. Quote, "I experienced their grief for a very long time." End quote. She still believes that her siblings survived that night and quietly assists in efforts to find them and publicize the case. Her daughter said in 2006, quote, She promised my grandparents she wouldn't let the story die and that she would do everything she could to keep it alive." End quote. So in the 21st century, these efforts have come to include online forums, a lot of media coverage. They increased the latter to examine the case to believe of what the children did in fact die in 1945. So they've also they haven't just been looking into leads, but they've also been pushing to have evidence examined to be maybe they did die in the fire, just to try and bring closure. There's been a lot of books written about this through original accounts.
Plus the circulation of George Jr.'s gospel.
Yeah. So,
no, he's passed away by now.
No, he's dead.
He died for his sins. Stacey Horn, who did a segment on the case for National Public Radio around the 60th anniversary in 2005, also believes the children's death in the fire is the most plausible solution. She posted in her blog with the material she had cut from her story for the time. She noted that the fire had continued to smolder all night after the house collapsed, and that 2 hours was not enough time to search the ashes thoroughly. So even if the firefighters may not have known what to look for, they would have found, they would have not been able to entirely look just based on their cursory look. Quote, "However," she said, "there is enough genuine weirdness about the whole thing that if someday it is that we learn that children did not die in the fire, I won't be shocked." So she believes that it's really plausible that they did die in there. And her theory is that the house kept smoldering. It didn't just go out. It just kept going. But she's also saying there's a lot of evidence to the other side, so she's kind of on the fence as well, but she believes that they did die.
Slow moldering embers mixed in with bones that have been charred do kind of look alike. And if you did gloss it over, buried it, and then come it out, you're never going to find it.
Yeah. That's the thing, though, is by him bulldozing the entire site, it kind of just removes any ability to go back and look.
It was over as soon as that happened.
Well, holy shit.
It's just really upsetting.
It's a lot of blur shit.
Yeah, a lot of blur shit.
But I gotta say,
do you? Do you really have to?
No. I'm loving this gospel of George Jr. That's going on the bookshelf.
Right next to the book box.
The book box. And some other random thing that we put on I might re-listen to all the episodes, get a random bookshelf online, and call it the bookshelf, and put fake props of all these items on
I could get my sister to make a sign if you wish.
Oh, that might be great, but let's hold off until we get the shelf first. Unless she can make...
She could.
Unless she can
if you asked her.
Yeah, we gotta figure out what the bookshelf would look like and see if she can make it.
But yeah. So that's the whole story.
Yeah. No, I got that. Well, that was really good. That was a fun little mystery that kind of
It's a good story. It's just nobody acted nicely at all in any of it.
Except the parents.
Yeah, but they got nothing for it.
Yeah.
Like, everything, nothing honorable served out.
I'll be honest, it's kind of pleasant to finally have a story where the main focus was not someone evil.
Yeah.
It's just sadness.
Like the parents weren't. It wasn't the fault of the father or the mother or anything.
Yeah, I was kind of getting scared that it was going to be another one of those. Because I know a couple of cases where it's like, they faked it. They faked the whole thing and they purposefully killed their kids type of cases. So I'm glad that it was not
We
one
covered
of
that
those.
last week.
Yeah, that was last week, wasn't it?
We haven't released that episode yet, but
Oh,
Oh,
fun.
yeah.
we covered the man who killed Halloween. So
I see.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't remember anything from that, but that's okay.
what I love is she was like, "Please don't tell me it's creepy kids," and then I was like, "We did that already a couple weeks ago too."
Yeah, that was even further. All right. Well, that was our episode. So thank you for joining us. Feel free to like us on Instagram and Twitter at BA Chaos Jar. Follow me on Twitter at I'm Glad You Asked _ Go to our Facebook page and follow us at Chaos Jar Podcast, which is also the name of our YouTube channel. Go to our YouTube channel and subscribe and like and all that shite. It'll be great. And you can be a patron at patreon.com/chaosjar and get early access to some bonus content. All right, all that in the show notes and more. Thanks for joining us. Good night.